friends, welcome back to my channel, Homeschool at Heart. I'm Leah, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the best books I read in 2022. All right, we are getting near to the end of this year, you guys. I read probably 50 to 60 books this year, and I wanted to share probably the top 10 of the books that I read. It may have been more than 50 or 60 books. I am not sure. I tried to kind of count it up, but I couldn't I couldn't remember if some of them were read in 2022 or at the end of 2021. So I just picked ones that I for sure knew that I had read this year. So I also categorized them into novels, read-alouds, and for lack of a better term, self-help. So they're not really self-help books. They're like Christian living books or books about homeschooling or, you know, those kinds of books. So, but those are the three categories I'm kind of putting them into. Next week's video is going to be, I think it's going to be my daughters telling what their favorite books that they read this year were. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to film them doing that tomorrow. If the filming of it comes out okay, then I will post it. They are 11, 10, and 7 for reference. So we shall see. I was trying to get them to tell me that today what their favorites were, and 2 of them were able to do that, and 1 of them wasn't sure. So we'll see. Also, it'll just be their top 3. I won't let them do 10. So just don't shy away from the video. It should be okay. It should be good. So, all right. So let's talk about novels first. So, I do have most of these books to like hold up and show you, except for in this category. So, because I listen to most novels on audio rather than sitting down to read them. Mostly because I don't feel like I have to pay 100% of my attention to them. So it makes it a little bit easier when I can listen to an audiobook while I'm doing things like reading, doing things. Guys, it's the end of the year. It's almost Christmas. I can't talk. Doing things like washing dishes or folding laundry, you know, things like that are like kind of mundane. So my very top favorite novel that I read this year was The Last Bookshop in London. So if I have a book that I don't have in front of me, I will post a picture of it. I'll show you a picture of it. This book, if you like historical fiction, this book is super terrific. It like really gave you the flavor of what was going on during wartime. It had a strong female character as the main character. There was laughter, there were tears, there was just, the story was very tightly woven. I loved it. So I highly recommend this book. It was so good. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm trying really hard not to. But I could not help but think about the Chronicles of Narnia, when they're like talking about how they're rushing the kids off from London to the countryside, because that's part of the story, and it's heart-wrenching. So anyway, highly recommend Last Bookshop in London. And then the other 3, I don't really have like a super strong like these 3 don't have like a ranking, I guess. So I will show, since I have this one, I will show you. The Girl Who Drank the Moon. This one I actually read to see if it was okay for my kids to read, and I ended up falling in love with this book. It is so good. It is a Newbery Medal Award winner, and with really good reason. I will say, if you are not a lover of magic, if your family doesn't like magic in their stories, this is not the book for you. There's so much magic in this book. In fact, it's about a witch who this town thinks that this witch is like taking a child from them every year. So they're sacrificing one of their children every year to the witch in the woods. But you find out at the very beginning, so this is not a spoiler, that the witch is actually coming and taking the child to another city to be cared for, because she doesn't want to leave this child out in the woods to die or be eaten by animals. However, this one special child, she decides that she's going to keep. And she runs out of milk at some point, and then she has the child drink from the moon, which is where the little girl gets her magic from. So it's so good, you guys. It's such a good book. And there's nothing in it that I'm very picky about what I let my kids read. I endorse this book. So good. So, however, just for reference, if you don't know me, if you're new here, I do let my kids read Harry Potter. And Percy Jackson and those kinds of books. So, if you're not into that, then you don't have to take my recommendation if that's not something that your family would enjoy or appreciate. Okay, most of these books are not children's books, so these next 2 don't have your kids read. Last Bookshop in London, probably you could have like a junior high schooler read. It's very clean. It's just not gonna hold a kid's interest, in my opinion. So there's that. The next 2, though, for sure, not kids' books. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So my favorite genres are mystery and young adult, and that this kind of was like a crossover of both of those. And so it was stunningly written in such a way that I could not guess the full ending by the end of the book, but it was also not one of those like, oh, I couldn't guess it because they made it impossible. It wasn't that. It was like, it just was surprising. There was such a twist at the end. It was so good. And it was probably like 10 hours worth of listening, and I did not feel like there was a dull moment in any of it. So, with a mystery, I really don't want to tell you guys the story so much. So, it's about a girl who is in high school. She's doing her senior project, and she is doing it on this like unsolved murder case in her town. And she anyway, it's very layered and very well written. So if you like murder mysteries, like young adult fiction, this is a great book. There are a couple of expletives in this story, so if you're reading that, it might be shocking if you come to that. So just as a warning. The next book that I'm going to talk about, I read this was a reread that I did this year, so that's why it's like kind of at the end of my novels, because I basically like picked 3 in each category, but in my novel section I had 4. I had read this one during 2020, And I decided, since I was in the play Alice in Wonderland, that I was gonna reread it. I listened to it. And I was so glad that I did. It was so good. And I thought about it every single performance of Alice in Wonderland. So basically Heartless is told very well. It's like a fractured fairy tale, or a retelling of a fairy tale, from the perspective of the Queen of Hearts. And it is the best villain story that I have ever come across. The best villain story. So if you are like a fan of villains, read this book. Please read this book. Actually, Marissa Meyer is the author of this book, and every book she's written has been just delightful. So, but this one was just, it was very timely for me, since I was in Alice in Wonderland and chilling with the Queen of Hearts backstage during the show. We had a great time together. I highly recommended it to the entire adult portion of our cast. I mean, it's dark. So, because, you know, it's about a bad guy and how she becomes the bad guy, because she didn't start out as evil. So, and it's, you know, there's tragedy and some, I mean, like, not tons of violence, but some violence involved. Like, there's a Jabberwock. Like, if you've ever read Alice in Wonderland, the original novel, it also is dark and weird. So I would expect any story to be kind of dark and weird that was like about that. So I don't know how Disney, like, I mean, it is weird. I don't feel like the Alice in Wonderland animated film is especially dark, but it is weird. So anyway, so keep that in mind when you go to read that book. Okay, so we're going to talk about next, like, the self-help section, which is, like, not really self-help. Like I said before, it is, like, Christian living / homeschool kind of stuff. So, so the very first one is God Does His Best Work with Empty. You guys, this was the summer book club book for my church women's ministry this past year, and it was so timely. I'm going to read the back of it just so I don't, like, forget what I'm trying to say. It's amazing how heavy the weight of emptiness can feel, how much room it can take up in our souls, how much pain it can be caused by something that isn't even there. But while we might see the emptiness of our lives as our greatest problem, that's not how God sees it. When God looks into our empty places, He sees His greatest opportunity. God does His best work in the emptiness of our insatiable craving for things that don't satisfy, relational disappointments and loneliness, relentless desire for comfort and security, ongoing struggle to live with loss and unfulfilled dreams. You guys, please read this book. It is just, it's perfect for the here and now. I really believe that. I really believe that we're at kind of like a time in so many people's lives where they just feel isolated and lonely and depressed and anxious. And this book speaks to all of that. And it's just so healing. So, in the same vein as that, this little book, In the Hands of a Fiercely Tender God by Colleen Chow, it's 31 Days of Hope, Honesty, and Encouragement for the Sufferer. This book was written by a friend of mine, and she is the same age as me, and she has a son the same age as my daughter Beth, and she is living through terminal cancer right now, or living with terminal cancer right now, taking life one day at a time. and continuing to be used by God as much as she can in these days. And she wrote this book about suffering. And now I'm going to say that in my mind, none of my suffering is going to be equal to hers. But the way that she wrote this book is that she is suffering, and she talks about specifically her suffering in this book. But the way that she has written the encouragements, it's like she is speaking to each individual person, and she does not make my seemingly insignificant in comparison to hers. My suffering is insignificant, is what I'm trying to say, in comparison to what she's suffering. But she doesn't act like that's true. In this book, she makes everyone's suffering seem like it's so important, which it is to God. But it makes it seem like it's so important to her as well. So when she talks about the truth of God's word as it relates to suffering, I feel like she's talking specifically to me, as I have lost loved ones this year, or have been dealing with depression and anxiety in a really difficult way, or suffering with the thought of losing some other people in our lives, and like any kind of suffering. This is for that. So if there's like one of these books that I'm recommending in this video, this is the one to buy, truly. As I'm like crying. So on a happier note, easier to talk about note, the last one in this particular category is Mothering by the Book by Jennifer Pepito. I think that's how you say her last name. This book is also just balm to the soul, guys. I enjoyed this book so much. This book is about the power of reading aloud to overcome fear and recapture joy. And basically she talks about a lot of her struggles as a mom, as a homeschool mom, as just a mom, and how reading aloud to her kids was able to help her to overcome some things. So it talks about a lot of her favorite read aloud books. Let's see. What books? How many does she have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 13 or 14 in here. Some of them are ones that I've read, some of them are not ones that I've read, but every single story had something applicable to my life. So I'll read a little bit of the back. Becoming a better, happier mom starts with stories you tell your kids. As a mom, you want to nurture a strong family, but fear steals your joy. Sometimes you wonder if you're failing your children or whether you're cut out for this. In Mothering by the Book, Jennifer takes you on a fascinating, whimsical journey that will bring freedom and fun to your parenting, one book at a time. This woman is also the founder of the Peaceful Press, so you may have heard of that before. And she really, she tells some very relatable struggles through her motherhood journey. In this book, she's very transparent and very real. And I think that all moms, whether you're homeschooling or not, can appreciate the things that she talks about in this book. Okay, so last category for this video is read alouds. So I'm going to talk to you guys first about, most of these are from Amazon, but this first one that I'm going to talk about is from Youth with a Mission Publishing, so YWAM Publishing. Sorry about my voice. I'm like struggling through a cold right now, and I don't know what is going on right this second. I thought it was doing better. This is why I didn't video it yesterday on my regular filming day, because my throat was so sore yesterday. It's so much better today, but Now my voice sounds funny. Okay, so just a little bit about Amazon links. I usually mention this when I talk about Amazon. Amazon does give me a little bit of money back at no cost to you. It doesn't raise your prices or anything like that. So, but if you click through the links that are in the description box, it does help us out a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be super helpful. Anyway, this particular book is not from Amazon. It is, I will link it though, in the description box. These are the Heroes of History series from YWAM Publishing. This one is Laura Ingalls Wilder, A Storybook Life. My family loved this. We laughed, we cried. It was a terrific time. It will like be in the memory banks of my homeschool life forever. Reading this book with my kids. We picked this one because my big kids were starting Little House in the Big Woods at the beginning of this school year, and it was so fun to read through this with them and like hear them joyfully talking about some of her real life experiences that she wrote about in her book. And you know, as more dramatic telling of it, but like her actual life is so interesting, you guys. And then this isn't a spoiler because it's a biography, but when she dies at the end, you guys, talking about the end of her life, all four of us were just weeping around this table. It was incredibly hard to hear about the end of her life, but man, did she have an amazing life, you guys. Also, right now we're reading the Teddy Roosevelt, an American original biography. Also so good. We haven't finished it. We're about halfway through, but I love it so much. So I'm going to link these below, but please check them out. Okay, next up is A Song for a Whale. We all loved this one so much too. This book is, you guys, it's so good. So it's about a deaf girl who feels like she's at a public school. She feels like she has no connection to anybody there except for she can only communicate with her interpreter. And so she feels like she doesn't have any friends there. She has like one actual friend who also is deaf, but he goes to a deaf school. And she finds out about this whale through one of her classes that is like part of two different species of whale. Two kinds of whale. But it's Blue 55 is his name, cannot communicate with either type of whale. And so he's alone. And she just really feels this connection with this whale and goes on this adventure where she is trying to figure out how to create a song for this whale, so that he can feel like somebody else in the world is thinking about him, is there for him. And so this book is about that journey. I will say that there is some bad attitudes and some huge disobedience on the path of this girl. So if you are sensitive to that, then probably don't read this. But my kids and I just talked about what she was doing that was right or wrong. It led to some really good discussions with me and my kids. So we loved this. It was such a good book. All right. And then the last one is an audio book by Lifehouse Theater on the Air. This is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. So you could totally just read the book. It's a classic novel, easy to find anywhere. But this one, if you wanted to listen to this, you can find it on iTunes if you search Lifehouse Theater on the Air. Excuse me. This is performed by the president and founder of Lifehouse Theater, Wayne Scott, who is a close personal friend of ours. And I just gotta say, it's done super well. Tim and I actually were on the Lifehouse Theater on the air team way back in the day when we worked on all of this stuff before we had kids. And I remember this being made, but I had not ever listened to it until this year. And he does such a good job performing it, but then there's also music and sound effects and all of these things that contribute to the story just being so epic and beautifully told. And, you know, there were some spots where I had to like pause and tell my kids like, oh, that means this, or this is what that phrase means, or this is what they're doing in the scene. But I feel like even if I read the book, it would be like that. But it just, even my 7-year-old was like totally enthralled with the story. And I think part of it was the presentation of it. So highly recommend this audio drama, and you can buy it year-round from iTunes. There are also other audio dramas, or this is an audio book, but there are audio dramas that we also put together. I personally wrote the Pride and Prejudice one. So if you look those up on iTunes, there's Pride and Prejudice, Emperor's New Clothes, Princess and the Pigs, Trapped in Aesop's Fables, Count of Monte Cristo, Hiding in Plain Sight, Ricky Tikki Tavi is a big one in our family. That might be all of them. I'm not sure. But anyway, so that is my list of my top 10 favorite books that I read this year in 2022. I'm hoping to do this again next year. We'll see. I'm thinking about doing the alphabet challenge. So what do you guys think? Does that seem like a doable task? I've done it one time, but it's kind of hard to find 26 books that start with different letters of the alphabet. We'll see. But for sure, I'm going to keep up with all the reading, and I'll let you know as we go, like what I think is good and excellent and worthy of you guys trying out. I would love it if in the comments you would let me know if there was one of these books that you are thinking about trying out, or if you have a top like 1 to 3 books that you would recommend for me to read. I'm always looking for more content like that to add to my TBR list. And I hope you guys are having a great holiday season, and I will see you in my next video. Okay, guys, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. I always appreciate it when you do. So my story for you today is about gnomes. I don't know if you guys are gnome people. If you are, I apologize for what I'm about to say. But I am not a gnome person. I do not really understand the hype of them. But I went to go open all of my Christmas stuff and put it out this year. And lo and behold, in one of the last box I opened the lid, and inside are 4 gnomes. How they got there, I'll never know. I don't know where they came from. But there they are, 2 that are like 2 feet high, and then 2 that are like small, like maybe 6 inches tall. So it's like 2 grown-up gnomes and 2 baby gnomes, and I'm like, where did these come from? Anyway, they just appeared. But Charlotte, my 7-year-old, loves them. This child, I never know what she's going to say. She keeps me on my toes. So today she comes up to me and says, "Hey, Mom, do you want to play a guessing game with me?" And I said, "I don't know. How long is it going to take?" I was in the middle of baking sourdough. So she was like, "Well, it's going to take however long it takes for you to guess the right answer." I was like, oh my gosh, Charlotte. So I said, okay, we'll play the guessing game. What is this guessing game? And she holds up this gnome, in her hands, like this. And she says, "You are going to guess how many animals are hiding underneath the gnome's beard." Now, my parents just moved. They found a bunch of stuff, you know, as you do when you move, that you forget about. And one of the things was this board with all of these, it's like a dollhouse, but it's like felt people. But there's also like animal counters and, you know, like things from back in the homeschool days when my sister was about Charlotte's age. So this is like 22 years ago or something like that. My sister just turned 30, 23 years ago. So it's, you know, these things are ancient, but they're like all these little flat felt animals. And so she's got, you guys, we played this game like maybe 5 times. There were somewhere between 2 and 27 felt animals that could hide underneath this gnome's beard. So as you can imagine, it took a long time. But anyway, I never know. She's just like so creative and so funny, and I never know what she's gonna say. But it kind of made my day, so I thought I'd share. But anyway, I hope you guys are I hope it was funny to you guys. You'll have to let me know in the comments. Also, I am like making a list of the funny things that she says. So one of these videos, I'll have to just do like a kid say the darndest things list and do like 3 or 4 or 5 of these things that Charlotte says that just crack me up all the time, because like I said, I never know what she's gonna say. Anyway, Merry Christmas, you guys, and I'll see you in our next video.